The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with hundreds of species from across the stars. Some had scales that shimmered like diamonds. Others had skin that changed colors with their moods. A few floated in special tanks filled with strange liquids. But among all these creatures, there was one group that sat quietly in the corner. The humans' Ambassador Minho Kong stood at the center podium. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. His hands did not shake. His voice did not rise. He simply presented the evidence on the massive screen behind him. 17 civilian transport ships, Minho said. 43,000. 218 souls. Families, children, workers traveling to new homes in the Kepler frontier. All destroyed by Velar Dominion warships. The images showed the wreckage floating in space. Broken metal. Scattered belongings? The remains of lives that ended too soon? Overlord Rin of the Velar Dominion rose from his seat. He was a massive creature, nearly 3 meters tall, with gray skin covered in natural armor plates. His people had conquered dozens of worlds. They feared nothing in the galaxy. These accusations are tiresome, Rin said, his deep voice echoing through the chamber. The humans always come here with their complaints, their evidence, their requests for justice. He made a sound that was something like laughter. And what do they do when we ignore them? They send another letter. They file another complaint. They ask for another meeting. Laughter spread through the chamber. The Crix collective delegates joined in, their thin bodies shaking with amusement. Even some neutral species smiled. Everyone knew humans were soft. Everyone knew humans would rather talk than fight. Minho stood silently and waited for the laughter to stop. His face showed nothing. "We have been part of this council for 142 years, he said, when the chamber grew quiet. In that time, we have filed 612 formal complaints against the Velar Dominion. We have requested peaceful solutions 437 times. We have offered compromises, trades, and treaties. Every single time, we have been ignored or mocked. Because you are weak," Rin said simply. "The galaxy respects strength. Your species talks and talks and talks. You never act. Why should anyone take you seriously?" More laughter filled the chamber. On Earth, in a room deep beneath the mountains, Admiral Taiho Park watched the broadcast on a large screen. His uniform was simple and dark. His face was lined with age, but his eyes were sharp and clear. He had served in the fleet for 40 years. He had seen many things. But he had never seen his people laugh at death. Beside him sat Dr. Hannah Lim. She was younger, with short black hair and glasses that reflected the screen's light. In her lap was a folder marked with red symbols that meant it was highly classified. The words on the cover read, "Protocol Omega. Is it time?" Hannah asked quietly. Taiho shook his head slowly. "Not yet. We must give them every chance. That is who we are, and if they don't listen..." Taiho turned to look at her. His eyes were not angry. They were not sad. They were simply patient, like a man who had waited a very long time for something he knew would eventually come. "Then they will learn what our patience actually means," he said. Far away, in orbit around a destroyed colony, Captain Unibeak stood on the bridge of her warship, the horizon's edge. She was a small woman with a stern face and hands that had known both comfort and combat. Her crew worked silently around her, cataloging the debris that floated past their windows. A young officer approached her with something in his hands. It was a child's toy, a small stuffed animal that had somehow survived the destruction. It was burned on one side and frozen on the other, but its face still smiled. Yuna took the toy and held it carefully. She thought about the child who had owned it. She thought about the parents who had bought it. She thought about the dreams that family had carried with them to a new world they would never see. Her jaw tightened. Her crew watched her, waiting for orders, waiting for anger, waiting for tears. But Yuna showed none of these things. She simply placed the toy in her pocket and returned to her duties. "Captain," her communications officer said, "the council session has ended. Ambassador Kong is returning to Earth." Yuna nodded. And the Velar response? They called us weak, Captain. They said we would do nothing. Yuna looked out at the floating wreckage. Somewhere in that debris were 40,000 stories that would never be told. 40,000 futures that would never happen. They think silence means weakness, she said quietly. They don't understand that sometimes silence means we are still deciding how to answer. Back at the council, Minho gathered his documents. The other human delegates joined him, their faces calm and controlled. As they walked toward the exit, High Consul Orth of the Crix Collective blocked their path. Orth was a thin creature with too many limbs and eyes that never blinked. His species was known for their cunning and their cruelty. Ambassador, Orth said with false sweetness, I hope you are not too disappointed. Perhaps next time, you should bring weapons instead of words. Though I doubt your species knows how to use them. Minho looked at Orth for a long moment. Then he smiled, just slightly. We know how to use them, Minho said. We simply choose not to. There is a difference. He walked past Orth and left the chamber. 1 hour later, Minho stood before the council one final time. This was not a request. This was not a complaint. This was a formal statement, recorded and broadcast to every species in the galaxy. The United Earth Government hereby requests a formal apology from the Velar Dominion for the destruction of 17 civilian vessels and the deaths of 43,218 citizens. We request full reparations to be paid to the families of the victims. We request the commanders responsible to be handed over for trial. He paused and looked around the chamber. You have 90 standard days to comply. This is our first warning. The laughter that followed was the loudest yet. Overlord Rin actually had to hold on to his seat to keep from falling over. High Consul Orth clapped his many hands together in mock applause. A warning, Rin gasped between laughs. The humans give us a warning. Oh, I am so frightened. What will they do? Send us a strongly worded letter? The chamber roared with amusement, but Minho did not react. He simply bowed politely and left the chamber for the final time. As he walked down the long corridor toward his ship, he passed Elder Mavic of the Oran Confederacy. Mavic was an ancient creature with wise eyes and silver skin. His species had seen empires rise and fall. They knew things that younger species did not. Mavic watched Minho walk past, and for a moment, something cold touched his heart. The human's face was not angry. It was not defeated. It was simply patient. It's like someone who had made a decision and was now waiting for the universe to catch up. Mavic had lived for 300 years. He had seen that look before, long ago, on the faces of another species that had been pushed too far. That species no longer existed, but neither did the ones who had pushed them. 3 months passed like water through open fingers. The 90 days came and went, and the Velar Dominion did not apologize. They did not pay reparations. They did not hand over their commanders. Instead, they sent a message to Earth that contained only 2 words: do something. On Earth, the message was received in silence. No angry broadcasts followed. No threats were made. The humans simply noted the response and continued with their lives. The galaxy laughed again and moved on to other matters. But not everyone was laughing. The Crix Collective watched the situation carefully. High Consul Orth saw an opportunity. If the Velar could attack humans without consequence, why couldn't the Crix do the same? Human mining operations in the Tau sector were rich with valuable minerals. The workers there were far from Earth's protection. They were easy targets. 2 weeks after the deadline passed, Crix raiders attacked 3 human mining stations. They killed the security guards first. Then they gathered the workers, 2,000 men and women, and put them in chains. The Crix did not believe in quick deaths. They believed in examples. The message Orth sent to Earth was filled with confidence. Your people now belong to the Crix Collective. They will work in our mines until they die. If you want them back, you will give us control of the entire Tau sector. You have 30 days to decide. But we both know what you will do. You will complain. You will ask for meetings. You will do nothing. Ambassador Minho Kong received the message while sitting in his office on Earth. He read it 3 times. Then he closed his eyes and sat in silence for a long moment. When he opened his eyes again, his face was calm, but something in his gaze had changed. The patience was still there, but now it had an edge to it, like a blade that had been sharpened for a very long time. He picked up his communication device and called Admiral Taiho Park. "I assume you have seen the message," Minho said. "I have," Taiho replied. "The Global Defense Council is meeting in 1 hour. What will you recommend?" There was a pause. When Taiho spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that might have been sadness. "I will recommend that we give them one final chance. After that, there will be no more chances." The Global Defense Council met in a room that officially did not exist. The men and women who gathered there were the most powerful people on Earth, but they did not look powerful. They looked tired. They looked like people who had carried a heavy weight for a very long time and were finally preparing to set it down. General Sunu stood before a massive display screen. He was a broad man with a scarred face and hands that had seen combat on 3 different worlds. He had spent 30 years building something that the galaxy did not know existed. "Our current military strength," Sun Wu began, and the numbers that appeared on the screen made several council members gasp. 1,200 warships, hidden in asteroid belts across human space, weapons platforms disguised as research stations orbiting every human colony, ground forces numbering in the millions, trained in secret facilities on moons that appeared empty on every scan. Technology that Earth had developed but never revealed, waiting in storage for the day it would be needed. "We have been preparing for this possibility since first contact," Sun Wu said. "Our ancestors knew that the galaxy might not welcome us peacefully. They hoped for the best, but prepared for the worst." Dr. Hannah Lim stepped forward next. She carried the same red folder she had held months ago, the one marked Protocol Omega. "This protocol was designed for a simple scenario," Hannah explained. "The scenario where diplomacy fails completely and our survival as a species requires military action. It includes precise plans for every major threat in the galaxy. We know their weaknesses. We know their supply lines. We know where their leaders sleep." She paused and looked around the room. "We have known for 100 years. We simply hoped we would never need to use this knowledge." Admiral Taiho rose from his seat. His voice was quiet but carried to every corner of the room. "I must ask this council a question," he said. "How many warnings did our ancestors give before they stopped asking? How many times did they try to solve problems with words before they used force? The answer is always the same. 3. They tried 3 times. They gave 3 chances. After 3 chances, they acted." He looked at each council member in turn. "We have given 2 warnings. The first was ignored. The second was answered with kidnapping and slavery. I recommend we give one final warning, not because I believe they will listen, but because we must know in our hearts that we gave them every possible chance to avoid what comes next." The vote was unanimous. Elder Mavic of the Oran Confederacy was an observer at a neutral trading station when he noticed something strange. Human commercial vessels were leaving contested zones in large numbers. Human merchants were closing their shops, canceling long-term contracts, saying goodbye to partners they had worked with for years. One human trader, an old woman named Gion, had sold goods at the station for 20 years. Mavic found her packing her belongings into crates. "Where are you going?" Mavic asked. Gin looked at him with eyes that held no anger, only a quiet resignation. "Home," she said simply. "We are all going home." "Why? Has something happened?" Gion was silent for a moment. Then she reached out and touched Mavic's arm gently, like a grandmother comforting a child. "You were always kind to us," she said. "I hope you stay safe in what comes next." Before Mavic could ask more questions, she was gone. He filed a report to the council, warning that human behavior did not match any known pattern. A species preparing to surrender did not act this way. A species preparing to negotiate did not act this way. Something else was happening. Something the council did not understand. His report was marked as low priority and filed away. Unread Ambassador Minho Kong stood before the Galactic Council for what would be the final time. The chamber was filled with the same creatures who had laughed at him before. They expected another complaint, another request, another empty threat. Minho's voice was calm and clear. The Crix Collective has taken 2,000 human citizens as slaves. The Velar Dominion continues to deny responsibility for 43,000 deaths. Both species have ignored our warnings and mocked our requests for justice. He paused and looked directly at Overlord Rin, then at High Consul Orith. This is Earth's end warning. You have 30 days to release all hostages unharmed. You have 30 days to withdraw all forces from human space. You have 30 days to present formal terms for reparations. There will be no fourth warning. There will be no more negotiations. There will be no more requests. Overlord Rin stood up, his massive body shaking with laughter. Or what, Ambassador? What will you do? You have been warning us for 100 years. Your words mean nothing. Your threats are empty air. Your species is weak and always will be. Minho looked at Rin for a long moment. His face showed nothing. 30 days, he said. Then he bowed politely and walked. Out of the chamber, he did not look back. He did not need to. The clock had started, and everyone in that chamber to remember this moment for the rest of their very short lives. The 30-day countdown began, and something strange happened across the galaxy. At first, no one noticed. The changes were small, quiet. It's like the tide pulling back from a beach before a great wave arrives. Human ships began leaving alien ports, not in panic, not in fear, but with the calm efficiency of people following a plan they had practiced many times. Cargo vessels completed their final deliveries and did not return. Passenger ships made one last trip and then went dark. Communication relays that humans had maintained for decades were quietly shut down. Alien merchants who had traded with humans for years found their partners, gone overnight. A Velar shopkeeper on a border station woke up to find every human business closed, every human apartment empty. Only small notes remained, written in careful handwriting. Thank you for your kindness. Stay safe. Elder Mavic watched these movements with growing dread. He had lived for 3 centuries. He had seen species prepare for surrender. He had seen species prepare for war. But he had never seen anything like this. This was not retreat. This was evacuation. Something is wrong, Mavic told the council on day 7. The humans are not behaving like a conquered people. They are behaving like people who are clearing a space for something terrible to happen. High Consul Orith dismisses concerns with a wave of his many hands. They are running away. Finally, they understand their place in the galaxy. Let them hide on their little planet. The Crix will take what we want from the territory they abandon. But Mavic could not shake the feeling in his old bones. He had seen that look in Jian's eyes. She was not afraid. She was sorry. Sorry for what was coming. Sorry for those who would not survive it. On day 15, High Consul Orith decided to send a message. He gathered 500 human hostages and brought them to a public square on a Crix world. Cameras broadcast the scene across the galaxy. These humans thought they could threaten the Crix Collective, Orith announced to the watching millions. Their government talks of warnings and deadlines. Let me show them what Crix think of their warnings. What followed was too terrible to describe in detail. The 500 died slowly, and their screams were broadcast on every channel. Orith made sure the cameras captured every moment. When it was over, he looked directly into the lens and smiled. 14 days remain on your warning, humans. We await your response with great interest. As the galaxy waited for Earth's reaction. They expected angry broadcasts. They expected demands for revenge. They expected threats, curses, tears. They received nothing. Earth was silent. No diplomatic messages. No military movements. No statements from leaders. The communication channels that connected Earth to the rest of the galaxy carried only static. It was as if humanity had simply stopped existing. This silence terrified Elder Mavic more than any threat ever could. They should be screaming, he told his assistant on day 18. They should be demanding justice. Any species would react to what Orith did. but they say nothing. They do nothing. Why? His assistant had no answer. Deep beneath the mountains of Earth, Admiral Tai-Ho Park boarded a transport that would take him to his flagship. Dr. Hannah Lim walked beside him, along with General Sun Woo Cho and 40 other officers who would lead humanity's response. Protocol Omega is fully activated, Hannah reported. All assets are in position. All personnel have been briefed. We are ready. Tai-Ho nodded slowly. His face was calm, but his eyes were heavy with the weight of what he was about to do. Captain Unibeak met him at the landing bay of the Eternal Patience, the most powerful warship humanity had ever built. Behind her stood the captains of 847 other vessels, all waiting in perfect silence. Admiral, Una said, saluting. The fleet awaits your orders. Tai-Ho looked at the assembled commanders. These were the men and women who had trained for this moment their entire lives, hoping it would never come, knowing that one day it might. I want to say something before we begin, Tai-Ho said, his voice carrying across the bay. What we are about to do will change everything. The galaxy will never look at humanity the same way again. Some will fear us. Some will hate us. Some will finally respect us. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. But I want you to remember why we are doing this. Not for revenge, not for glory, not because we enjoy destruction. We are doing this because we tried everything else first. We talked. We negotiated. We warned. We gave them every chance to be better. They chose to mock us. They chose to kill our people. They chose to believe that our patience was weakness. His eyes hardened. We will show them what our patience actually was. It was mercy. It was giving them time to change. It was hoping they would choose peace. They did not. And now mercy has ended. In a hidden command center on Earth, Dr. Hannah Lim sat before a console covered in switches and screens. Her finger hovered over a single button. Protocol Omega is ready for final activation, she said into her communicator. Awaiting authorization. Authorization granted, came Tai-Ho's voice. May history forgive us for what we do in the name of our children. Hannah pressed the button. Across 200 light-years of space, things began to wake up. Weapons platforms that had pretended to be asteroids for 50 years powered on their engines. Ships that had hidden in gas giants emerged from the clouds. Ground forces that had trained in secret began loading into dropships. On day 29, Overlord Rin hosted a grand celebration on the Velor homeworld. He invited leaders from across the Dominion to mock humanity's final warning one last time. One day remains, Rin announced to his guests. And what have the humans done? Nothing. They hide on their planet and tremble. Tomorrow, when their deadline passes, I will personally lead a fleet to their precious Earth and show them what true power looks like. The celebration lasted until midnight, on day 30. At exactly 0 o'clock Earth Standard Time, something unprecedented happened. Every human ship, every human station, every human citizen and non-human space crossed into human territory at the same moment. The borders that had been open for 100 years suddenly closed. Then the communication channels went dead. For the first time in galactic history, humanity stopped talking. Elder Mavic stood at his observation deck, staring out at the stars. The space that had once been filled with human ships and signals was now dark and empty. Elder, his assistant, asked, "What are you looking at?" Mavic did not answer immediately. He was remembering an old story, told to him by his grandmother when he was young. It was a story about a forest that went completely silent before a great fire swept through it. The animals knew what was coming. They had no words to warn each other. They simply went quiet and ran. "I am watching a species stop talking," Mavic finally said, "and I am wondering if we should have listened when they still had words to share." Outside his window, the stars seemed to hold their breath. The silence lasted exactly 12 hours. Then the fire came. The war did not begin with a declaration. There were no speeches, no broadcasts, no final chances. At exactly 12 hours after the deadline passed, human fleets appeared in 17 star systems simultaneously, and the galaxy learned what humanity had been doing for the past century, they had been waiting. The Velar. Dominion's outer defense network was the first to fall. Admiral Tai-Ho Park's fleet emerged from hidden positions in an asteroid belt that Velar scouts had searched 100 times and found empty. The humans had been there all along, powered down, silent, patient. The battle lasted for hours. Velar commanders sent desperate reports back to their homeworld. But their words made no sense. "They fight like nothing we have ever seen," one captain transmitted before his ship was destroyed. "They do not hesitate. They do not make mistakes. They move like they know exactly what we will do before we do it." They did know. Dr. Hannah Lim and her team had spent 40 years studying every species in the galaxy. They knew how VLR commanders thought. They knew their favorite formations, their standard responses, their weaknesses. The humans did not fight with rage. They fought with information, with precision, with the terrible efficiency of a species that had used its patience to learn everything about its enemies. Captain Unibeak led the assault on the VLR military shipyards. Her ship, the Horizon's Edge, moved through enemy fire like water flowing around stones. Her weapons officer called out targets, and Una made decisions faster than the Velar could react. "Enemy command station is exposed," her tactical officer reported. "Their shields are failing." Una looked at the station on her screen. Inside were thousands of Velar soldiers, commanders who had ordered attacks on human civilians, officers who had laughed at Ambassador Minho's warnings. She thought of the child's toy still in her pocket. She thought of 40,000 lives ended too soon. "All batteries," she said quietly. "Fire." The command station disappeared in a ball of light. Her weapons officer, a young man named Jihoon, hesitated at his console. His hands were shaking. The scale of destruction was beyond anything he had imagined. Una walked to his station and stood beside him. Her voice was gentle but firm. "I pulled a child's toy from the wreckage of a colony ship," she said. "A small stuffed animal with a smile on its face. Someone loved that toy. Someone carried it across the stars because it made them feel safe." She put her hand on Jihoon's shoulder. "We are not doing this because we enjoy it. We are doing this so no more children have to die because the galaxy thought we were weak." Jihoon's hand stopped shaking. He returned to his work. The Crix Collective learned about the war 6 hours after it began. High Consul Orith received reports of human fleets appearing throughout Crix space, cutting supply lines, destroying military installations, and freeing the slaves that the Crix had kept for generations, for the first time in his long life. Orith felt fear. He immediately sent a message to Earth, offering to release all human hostages. He offered reparations. He offered territory. He offered anything they wanted. Admiral Tai-Ho's response was short. "We stopped asking." General Sunwoo Cho landed on Velar colony worlds with ground forces that moved like shadows. They did not come to conquer. They came to liberate. For centuries, the Velar had kept other species as slaves, forcing them to work, to serve, to suffer. Now human soldiers broke open the camps and told the slaves they were free. A species called the Taurium had been enslaved by the Velar for 8 generations. They had forgotten what freedom felt like. When human soldiers opened their cages, they did not know how to react. General Sunwoo knelt before an elder Taurium and spoke softly. "You are free now. No one will hurt you anymore." The elder looked at him with eyes that had seen too much pain. She asked, "Why do you help us? What do you want from us?" Sunwoo thought for a moment before answering. "Long ago, humans were slaves too. We were enslaved by our own kind, by those who thought they were better than others. We know what it feels like to be treated as less than a person. We promised ourselves that when we had the power to stop such things, we would." He stood and offered his hand. "You can stay here, or you can come with us. Either way, you will never wear chains again." The Taurium chose to fight alongside the humans. So did 6 other freed species. The Velar had made many enemies over the centuries, and now those enemies had a chance for justice. Elder Mavic watched the reports coming in from across the galaxy. The speed of humanity's advance was impossible to believe. Systems that should have held for months fell in days. Defenses that were considered unbreakable crumbled like sandcastles before a wave. He contacted Earth directly, pleading for the Oran Confederacy's neutrality to be respected. His people had not laughed at humans. His people had not attacked their ships. He hoped that would count for something. Ambassador Minho Kong answered the call personally. "Elder Mavic," Minho said, his face calm on the screen. "Your people were kind to us when others were cruel. Your borders are safe. No human ship will cross into Oran space without permission." Mavic felt relief wash over him, but it was mixed with horror at what he was witnessing. "Ambassador, please," he said. "I understand why you are doing this, but the destruction is beyond anything the galaxy has seen. Is there no way to stop?" Minho was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was tired but firm. "Elder, we spent 142 years trying to be accepted. We filed complaints. We attended meetings. We offered peace. Every time, we were mocked. Every time, we were told that words are weakness and only force matters." He leaned forward. "Please tell the Council what happens when you mock a species' patience for a century. Tell them what humanity's silence actually meant. We were not scared. We were not weak. We were giving them time to choose differently. They chose war. We simply gave them the war they asked for." On day 6 of the war, the Velor homeworld's orbital defenses fell. Admiral Taiho's fleet surrounded the planet, weapons powered and ready. Millions of Velor looked up at the sky and saw human ships blocking out the stars. Overlord Rin, the first time in his life, sent a message asking for mercy. Taiho read the message on his bridge. His officers waited in silence for his response. "Tell him," Taiho said slowly, "that we will accept unconditional surrender. Tell him that if he surrenders now, we will spare the civilians. Tell him that we are not like them. We do not kill those who cannot fight back." He paused. "But also tell him that we remember every life they took, every child who died in the void, every family that was destroyed. Tell him that mercy is not forgiveness. And tell him that if he tries to fight, his entire species will learn why humanity waited so long before answering." Rin surrendered 1 hour later. The war was not over. The Krix still resisted. Other species watched with growing fear. But something had changed in the galaxy forever. Humanity had stopped talking, and everyone finally understood what that meant. 3 months after the end warning expired, the galaxy looked very different. The Velor Dominion had surrendered completely. Their military was dismantled, their leaders arrested, their empire broken into pieces. The Krix Collective had collapsed into civil war as different factions blamed each other for the disaster they had brought upon themselves. High Consul Orith had fled into hiding, hunted by his own people for destroying everything they had built, and humanity stood in the ruins, not as conquerors, but as something the galaxy had never expected. They stood as liberators who did not want to rule, as victors who did not celebrate their victory. Admiral Taiho Park walked through the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. His footsteps echoed in the empty space. The seats that had once been filled with laughing aliens were now empty or occupied by silent, frightened delegates. No one laughed anymore. No one mocked. The species that had survived did so because they had been wise enough to stay out of humanity's way, or kind enough to earn their mercy. Taiho stood at the center podium where Ambassador Minho had been mocked so many times. He looked around at the faces watching him, and he felt no pride, only a deep, tired sadness. "We did not want this," he said, his voice filling the chamber. "For 142 years, we tried to be part of your community. We wanted to trade, to learn, to share what we knew. We believed that different species could live together in peace if they simply treated each other with respect." He paused, letting the words settle. But respect was never given. We were called weak because we chose to talk instead of fight. We were called cowards because we preferred negotiation to war. Every time we asked for justice, we were laughed at. Every time we warned of consequences, our words were ignored. His eyes moved across the assembled delegates. So let me tell you what humanity's patience actually was. It was not weakness. It was not fear. It was the choice to give you every possible chance to do the right thing. It was hoping every single day for 100 years that the galaxy would learn to be better. It was mercy. He took a deep breath. Mercy has limits. When you killed our children and laughed about it, you reached those limits. What happened next was not revenge. It was the natural result of your choices. You wanted to know what humans would do when we stopped talking? Now you know. The chamber was absolutely silent. No one moved. No one spoke. We will not rule you, Taiho continued. We will not take your worlds or enslave your people. We are not you. But we will remember what happened here. And if any species ever threatens humanity again, if any leader ever decides that our patience means they can kill our people without consequence, we will remember this day, and so will they. He stepped back from the podium and walked out of the chamber. Behind him, the galaxy began to breathe again. Captain Unibeak. Now Admiral Unibeak took her fleet back to the place where it all began. The debris field where 40,000 humans had died was still there, floating silently in the void. 3 months of war had not cleaned up the wreckage. The universe did not care about human pain, but Una cared. She ordered her fleet to form a circle around the debris field. 800 ships, each carrying hundreds of crew members, all came to a stop and turned their lights toward the floating remains of lives that had been cut short. Una reached into her pocket and pulled out the child's toy she had kept since that first day. It was worn now, faded from being held too many times. She looked at its smiling face and felt tears she had been holding back for months finally fall. "We remember you," she said softly. "We remember every single one of you. You did not die in vain. Because of you, no more children will be taken from their families. Because of you, the galaxy knows that human lives have value. Because of you, we are finally respected." She released the toy into space, giving it full military honors. Every ship in her fleet fired a single shot into the void, a salute to the dead that echoed across the stars. "Rest now," Una whispered. "We will take it from here." On Earth, Dr. Hannah Lim began her new work. Protocol Omega was finished. The weapons were powered down, the battle plans archived. Now she worked on something different. Something better. "We proved we can destroy," she told Ambassador Minho one evening, as they walked through a garden filled with flowers from 100 different worlds. "Now we need to prove we can build." Minho nodded slowly. "The freed species need homes. The damaged worlds need healing. There is much work to do. More than we can finish in our lifetimes," Hannah agreed. "But we start anyway. That is what humans do. We start things that our children will finish." Elder Mavic became the leader of the reformed Galactic Council. His species had survived because they had treated humans with basic decency when others had not. Now he used his position to rebuild what had been broken. He gathered the young species of the galaxy, the ones who had watched the war from afar and learned its lessons. He told them a story they would never forget. "When I was young," Mavic said, "I thought I understood all the species in the galaxy. I knew who was strong and who was weak. I knew who would fight and who would surrender. I thought humans were soft because they talked instead of shooting." He looked at his audience with ancient eyes. "I was wrong. The humans were never soft. They were patient. They gave the galaxy 100 years of chances to be better. 100 years of warnings. 100 years of mercy. And when the galaxy threw that mercy back in their faces, they showed us what they had been holding back." He leaned forward. "Let me give you advice that will save your lives. When humans speak, listen. When humans warn, believe them. And when humans go silent, you have already lost. Do not wait for them to prove it. By then, it will be too late." General Sun Wucho stayed behind on the liberated worlds. He oversaw the rebuilding of communities that had been enslaved for generations. He watched former slaves learn to live as free people for the first time. One day a small Taurium child approached him. She had been born in the camps and had never known anything but chains. "Are you a god?" she asked, looking up at him with wide eyes. Sunwoo knelt down so he could look at her face to face. He smiled gently. "No, little one. I am just a human. We are a species that knows what suffering feels like. We decided long ago that when we had the power to stop suffering, we would use it. Not because we are gods, but because we remember what it was like to need help and receive none." The child thought about this for a moment. "Will you stay with us?" "For as long as you need me," Sunwoo promised. Admiral Taiho Park returned to Earth 1 month later. He did not attend celebrations. He did not accept medals. Instead, he went to a memorial being built near the mountains where the war had been planned. It was a wall of black stone, carved with the names of 43,218 people who had died before humanity had a chance to save them. He walked along the wall, reading names he had never known, imagining faces he had never seen. These were the ones who had not lived to see their species finally earn the galaxy's respect. These were the ones who had paid the price for peace with their lives. Taiho placed his hand on the cold stone and closed his eyes. "We heard you," he whispered. "Every complaint we filed was for you. Every warning we gave was in your name. Every ship we sent carried your memory. The galaxy will never forget what they did to you, and they will never forget what we did in return." He opened his eyes and looked up at the sky. Somewhere up there, the eternal patience kept watch over Earth. A reminder to the galaxy that humanity's kindness was a choice, not a weakness. "We asked nicely," Taiho said to no one in particular. "We warned fairly. And when both failed, we proved that patience was never weakness." He turned and walked away from the memorial. Leaving the dead to their rest behind him, the wall stood in silence, holding the names of those who had taught the galaxy a lesson it would never forget. Patience was not weakness, it was mercy, and mercy always has limits.